Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 11, 2023 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Item three is public comment. For public comment, we allow 15 minutes, and Mr. Milano will count the 15 minutes, and we allow 3 minutes per speaker, and I will let the speaker know when you have 30 seconds to go. And we'll try to alternate between speakers seeking public comment, both live and in the remote session online. And anyone coming up for public comment, please write down your name and address or state your name and address if you're online. So, anyone for public comment? Yes, sir. Good evening. If you could just state your name and your address so everyone knows who you are.
Sure. My name is Matt Morong. I live at 136 Elliott Street. And I just want to introduce myself in terms of professional background. I'm an architect. I specialize actually in the design of transit facilities and transportation facilities, and I work with transit agencies on a daily basis. And I also have a background in planning work. And I sent a letter a little over 2 weeks ago to the select board, got one acknowledgement of receipt. And so I'm just here to make sure the message was received. And I'm also here to raise a new concern about the emergence of some citizen experts who are interested specifically in reclassifying the trolley here in Milton. I think that the claims being made are worthy of scrutiny for factual inaccuracy and some half-truths. Depictions of the Mattapan line don't seem to sound like the people making claims really write it or haven't written it in a while. And I would also hope that this newfound interest in transportation goes toward improving the Mattapan line, but I don't see that happening in the respondents' actions. The MAPC report that gets cited in these concerns classifies Milton as a trolley suburb. But something, and that's almost treated like a smoking gun of sorts. But something that gets left out of this is the fact that Newton is also classified as a trolley suburb. To my mind, I think Milton would do well to follow Newton's lead in terms of making progress towards zoning for MBTA communities. Planning is both an art and a science. It's what I love about it. It takes time and intention to get it right. And we should be asking if the actions of the planning board have enabled this to happen in what I think is a really critical issue for this town. I'm worried it hasn't. And I'm also worried that they don't have the will necessarily to do this based on their actions so far. So I'm urging the select board to pressure the planning board to take up their charge and come forward with a well thought out solution to the MBTA communities law. And regarding the issue on the agenda tonight for the change of classification of Milton, I urge a no vote due to the misinformation that this request is based on. Milton should ask for favors from the state when we have something to show in good faith for our efforts toward this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Milano, do we have anyone online for Citizen Speak?
Not at this time, no.
Anyone else for Citizen Speak or public comment? All right, we'll move on. And if there's no objection, I'd like to move item 14, which is the chair's report. I'd like to move that up to right now for a very important community announcement. If there's no objection.
No objection.
So Linda and David Murray have long been vital participants in our community life. And Linda and David, along with Ed Kahane from Elm Street, have asked me to read the following letter. It is on the letterhead of the Cassidy Murray Foundation. And the letter reads as follows. Dear Chairman Zulus and members of the Select Board, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your support and encouragement. This town and so many of your leaders and employees have gone above and beyond to our family. There are simply no words to describe how thankful we are to each and every one of them. Today marks 475 days since our beautiful daughter Cassidy passed away in Aruba. She was one of the brightest lights in our lives, and she leaves a void that can never be filled. Cassidy was a bright-eyed 13-year-old girl who loved life and loved people. Helping others is the mission that we now hold in her name. For the past year and a half, we have worked tirelessly to create awareness and make changes to the water safety rules in Aruba. At last, there are signs that the country is listening and will enact reforms in Cassidy's name. On the same day, we learned that news. Vegas Golden Knights coach Bruce Cassidy, whose daughter was our daughter's best friend in school, called and asked if he could bring the Stanley Cup to Milton to promote the foundation we're launching in Cassidy's name. It was June 25th. There began a frantic sequence of events. At each step, your team was by our side. From Chief King, Lieutenant Alba, and Lieutenant Caputo at the police department, to Chase Berkeley and Tom McCarthy at DPW, Superintendent Burrows, Principal McDavitt, Glenn Pavlicek at the schools, and so many others. There was an army of eager supporters willing to put their busy schedules on hold to honor our daughter's memory. It gives us strength and fills us with gratitude. We hope that you and the residents of Milton will join us on Thursday at 9 a.m. outside of Glover to welcome the Stanley Cup and to launch the Cassidy Murray Foundation. All are welcome. Thank you again for your most gracious and generous support. Sincerely, Linda and David Murray. So this Thursday morning at 9 a.m., Coach Bruce Cassidy of the Vegas Golden Knights will bring the Stanley Cup to Milton. And just a word about the Cassidy Murray Foundation, which is the purpose of the Stanley Cup coming to Milton. The Cassidy Murray Foundation aims to help families who are plunged into grief following a tragic loss. Specifically, the foundation hopes to increase access to mental health resources, including trauma and grief therapy. It will also work to expand educational opportunities for young people. And with respect to the event on Thursday morning, let's see, let me get my note on that. With respect to the event on Thursday morning, the event will feature the public arrival of the Stanley Cup and Coach Cassidy, followed by a short 15-minute speaking program with remarks delivered by Cassidy Murray's father, Dave, her 18-year-old brother, Adam, and Coach Cassidy. At the conclusion of the speaking program, attendees will be welcome to take personal pictures with the Stanley Cup. And for audio purposes, music will be playing over the PA system during the photo line. So let's hope we can all do our best to support the Murray family and the Cassidy Murray Foundation, and come out and support their efforts on behalf of the town and in memory of their daughter, Cassidy. So that is the end of the chair's report. Item 4 is discussion approval, installation of a bench at the corner of Quarry Lane and Pleasant Street in memory of Catherine Todd. And I believe we have some people here to talk about that. And if you could just please introduce yourselves, and then the floor is yours.
Sure. I'm Diane Spinelli from Quarry Lane.
I'm Kate Daly from Quarry Lane. And I just want to thank you all for inviting us here tonight, Nick and Lynn, for making the arrangements. So we're hoping to be able to put a bench at the corner of Pleasant Street and Quarry Lane. I have pictures I can show you of that location if you have questions about that. Catherine was a dear friend and neighbor. She grew up here in Milton. She was raising her 3-year-old at the time, and she passed away quite unexpectedly last year. And we miss her terribly and would love to be able to put this bench in that location in her honor and her memory. It's our neighborhood bus stop. Her son will be starting kindergarten with our kids in the fall. And I think it would mean a lot to us and would mean a lot to her family and friends to be able to have a spot that, there's nothing like sitting next to Catherine and having a chat, and to be able to have a bench there. That's also the spot where her son will get on and off the bus and meet his dad and his grandparents and his aunts and uncles and all of us who hold him so dear. It would mean a lot, I think, to all of us.
and has full support of the neighborhood, both in Pleasant and Quarry Lane.
And we have a plan for fundraising and providing the bench all, by friends and family.
And we have received, letters and from the neighborhood that we've all received. So questions or comments from the members? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I think it's a wonderful tribute to your friend, and I'm fully supportive of it. So thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the members? I will reiterate the thank you from Ms. Musto. This is a second example in a row of the times that we as a community face sadness, and that happens. When it happens, we all come together, and it's many times it's those that are affected most by the sadness that lead us out of it. So, thank you for doing this, and thank you for that. So,
I'll make a motion.
yes, Ms. Musto.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve the installation of a bench at the corner of Quarry Lane and Pleasant Street in memory of Catherine Todd.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your
Thank you
efforts.
very
and-
much.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
And we'll
Thank
be,
you.
you can be in touch with the town administrator's office. And if there's anything you need going forward, just let us know, and we'll help to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 5, discussion approval of the recommendations of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. I believe we have a couple of members of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee who are joining us tonight, perhaps one in person and one remotely. Is that right, Ms.?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Chris Hart is joining us remotely.
He's now a panelist, Mr. Chair.
Oh, there he is. Oh. We can see you, Chris. Do you want to just make sure we can hear you?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Hi,
Okay.
Member Select Board, Chris Hart. Happy to join you. Sorry I can't be there in person.
All right, so Ms. Conlon, we'll turn over the floor to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of the board, and Mr. Milano. I'm Katie Conlon. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee along with Chris Hart, who's also our representative to the Massport Community Advisory Committee. Raj Pathak and Andy Schmidt make up the committee. We've had a couple of meetings recently where we've been working on some letters, two of which we wanted to present to you this evening, and a couple more that we are working on, and we'll plan to be back probably at your August 8th meeting, if that works for your agenda, on a couple of other items. So the two that are before you this evening, one relates to, and Mr. Hart can address this one more, he took the drafting on the letter regarding the MIT study, which was conducted a couple of years ago, and the recommendations for flyable alternatives for the runway 4R flight path. So I think the board's aware that was recommended by MIT to the FAA, but we have not yet had any action. It has not been implemented. So we thought it was time for the board to consider submitting a letter that would follow up with the FAA on the status of this and encourage them to implement or at least test those alternative flight paths. And I don't know, Chris may want to weigh in a little bit more on that letter, Chris.
Well,
Mr.
I
Hart.
think Ms. Conlon might have stolen most of my thunder. I will say that the letter does reiterate the content of letters in the past that the Select Board has sent to the FAA. And what it's really asking is, at heart, is that the FAA actually engage with Milton about dispersion. There's discussion there about some of the technical aspects of the MIT study and some of the technical reasons why the concentration of noise is occurring. But really, it's trying to take the FAA to task such as we can for not actually directly engaging with the town. So that's really the hope from this letter, is that they will.
Question or comments from the members? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One of the letters, I'm sorry, I don't have both in front of me, but one mentions the different paths, like it says the 27s. I can't remember if it's the regional letter or the other letter.
That's probably the letter to the congressional delegation.
Okay, so there's also the 33s, and they're not mentioned in that do go over Milton. So I don't know, sort of wondering if we should just add that in, because that is another flight path that does go over Milton. People do get some 33s as well. So that's
Yeah, I
one
think
thing I would mention. And the other thing is when you're talking about dispersion, we're talking regional pre-RNAV. We're not talking about throughout the town, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that for people. So those are my 2 points really, was just about the dispersion and the 33s, because I know that certain parts of town do get those as well.
Yeah, so the reference to 4R, 4L, and 27 is really in the letter to the congressional delegation, but the board could certainly feel free to add 33 left if you'd like. That's at a higher altitude, so 4R, 4L, and 27 are the ones that we've focused on more, but you could certainly add that to the first paragraph at 33L.
And I just
Oh, Ms.
one
Musto, go ahead.
Thank you. One other comment. I think the issue also is that although some of these flight paths are supposed to be higher, they're not. So, I think, because I was on this committee a long time ago when it first started. And so that was part of the issue, is that they would say that they're at a certain altitude and they're really not when you would actually get the flight track. So I think it is another path over town. If we're going to say the path, then we probably should add it. That would be my take on that.
These are drafts that we're presenting to you, so you can certainly feel free to add that in the congressional delegation letter. And if you want, I can turn to that next, unless there's anything else on the 4R letter.
I think maybe we'll have a vote. Any further discussion on the 4R letter, the dispersion letter? So maybe we'll have a vote on that, and then we'll go to the congressional letter. So for the public, this is a letter to the FAA asking the FAA to reinitiate its review of dispersion resulting from the MIT report from Mr. Hansman of June 2021. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the letter, and we'll sign it and send it on to the FAA.
I'll make that motion. Make a motion to approve the follow-up letter to the FAA regarding the MIT recommendations for runway 4R dispersion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right. Item 5B is the letter we just alluded to, which is the letter to the town's congressional delegation regarding the FAA Reauthorization Act. And perhaps Ms. Conlon, you could lead us on that one.
Well, just some background. Every 5 years, the FAA Reauthorization Act comes up before Congress. So in 2018, there was a Reauthorization Act approved. 2023, they're in another phase of looking at this. Now, not a lot that the communities in the town wanted in 2018 was ultimately in what was enacted by Congress. So some of these items that are specifically referenced have come up before, but it's worth pursuing them again. A few months ago, or probably sometime in April or May, a community group here in town that Cindy Christensen is one of the members of it. She's and some of her colleagues had asked the board to support some legislation that Congressman Lynch had filed. Your board referred it to us. We've looked at it. We've cited 6 bills that Congressman Lynch is a sponsor of in the House. There are some companion bills in the Senate. So essentially, this letter is addressed to the 4 members of the congressional delegation that represents Milton, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, Representative Lynch, and Representative Presley. And in a nutshell, it thanks them for their past efforts, acknowledges what the issues are in the town, and writes in support of these 6 bills. I don't know if you want me to go through all of them, but in a nutshell, what they are is one of them is a measure that would create a community advisory committee and appoint there's I think 20 members of it. There's a different version of it in the Senate, which is one of the reasons that if there is a conversation with Senator Markey's office, it would be helpful to advocate that the bills mirror each other and not that the Senate bill be more like the House bill. One of these bills that Congressman Lynch has filed is seeks a consensus report. So rather than starting a brand new health study, which a lot of people call for, there's already a lot of existing health studies on the issue of airplane noise and airplane pollution and what the health effects are. And this is an idea that actually came to the board in 2016 by Dr. Christensen, who at the time was the CAC representative. The select board at that time thought it was a good idea, supported it to the congressional delegation. And the idea would be that you'd ask the National Academy of Medicine and Sciences to assemble a panel of experts and rather than starting a whole new health study, which would take a long period of time, synthesize and compile all of the data that already exists. And really use all the existing studies that are in effect. I would describe another one of them as a similar approach on the issue of measuring metrics and thresholds. A couple of these are probably less critical to the issue of noise. For instance, there's one that relates to aircraft ownership transparency, meaning any foreign owner of an aircraft should be disclosed to the FAA. So there are a variety of bills. There's no reason not to support them. We think they all achieve good things. They're not going to help solve the noise problem over the town immediately, but they're all good things for the town to advocate for to our congressional delegation. And so we've written the letter to encourage the two U.S. senators to, this letter says file companion legislation in the Senate. There is now legislation pending. So in asking for a meeting between, we suggested the chair of the board and the town administrator to meet with a member of the, either one of the representatives or the senators and or a member of their staff. And sometimes in particular, Representative Lynch and Representative Presley, when they're back in the districts in the summertime, that I know that had been a good time in the past for them to meet with the town administrator, member of the board, to talk about issues generally. So we recommend that there be some outreach to those offices to advocate the town's position with respect to the Reauthorization Act and see if we can get some one-on-one meetings, even if it's with a staffer, hopefully a senior staffer who's familiar with the issues and might even be able to help synthesize these differences in the Senate and House bills. So that's what this second letter is, essentially supporting measures that are in place and asking for some additional outreach.
Questions or comments from the members? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quick thanks to you, Ms. Conlon, and Mr. Hart for your work on this. I know this is obviously a very pressing matter. There was a very important, I think, article in the New York Times last month about how noise pollution can take years off of the human life. And I think that, from an equity perspective, from a health perspective, these are important issues to continue to raise with our congressional delegation. So I'm just grateful that you are working so hard on this, and I'm in favor of both. Obviously, I already voted on the one, but this letter as well.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you. Again, thank you for working on these letters as well. And if possible, if we can add in the 33 on that letter, that would be a good thing to add in, because we're trying to show there are also multiple routes in the town.
Sure.
So I think it would be important to add that.
I'm happy to add it and send you a new version. I think the board's going to change the signature blocks anyway. I understand, you're now having the chair sign on behalf of the board, so we'll need to make that change as well. But we can certainly add 33L in that paragraph.
Yeah, I think Ms. Musto, where it says in flights departing runway 27, we would add, is it arriving on 33?
Departing.
It's departing. So to say departing runway 27 and we'd add and runway 33L at Logan. Okay. All right. Any further comments or questions? All right. So with that amendment, if someone wants to make a motion.
I'm sure. I'll move to approve the letter to the town's congressional delegation regarding the FAA Reauthorization Act.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's right. Ms. Conlon, there's nothing further on the agenda, but it is discussion approval recommendations of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. Perhaps you can give us the coming attractions that you alluded to.
Well, I just briefly, our committee's met twice within the last 2 weeks, and we're looking at meeting again in late July. A deadline was just extended. The FAA is, for the first time in 40 years, believe it or not, is reviewing its noise metric and its noise policy. They've had one single metric that they apply to whether you're right at the airport or whether you're a community like us that's further away from the airport but affected by these changes over the past dozen years, known as NextGen. So this is a good opportunity for people all around the country to comment. And to date, there have been 1,200 comments filed on their website. A lot of organizations have asked for extensions, and they have now granted an extension until September 29th. So we have a working draft that we have sent it along to Karis North. We've actually gotten some comments from Boston Fair Skies, the group that I mentioned, headed by Cindy Christensen. We've had a productive meeting with her last night on the Reauthorization Act, as well as on the noise policy. And there's also a second, more pressing, not a policy, but the U.S. Department of Transportation, the FAA, are looking at regulating this emerging trend of air taxis that may be coming down the road, and drones and cargo transport that would be very different than what airplane traffic is. So they've asked for comment from the public on this new national strategy they're looking at. They've identified 20 areas in the National Register. In the Federal Register, they've put forward 20 areas where they're looking for public comment. And it's a little more challenging because this is emerging technology and we don't know what all the issues could be and what it's going to be like. So we're working on a draft to give to you. That comment deadline is August 16th. So we're looking to get something for your August 8th meeting on what they call advanced air mobility, which is drones and air cargo and air taxis. And then for one of your probably late August or your September meeting on the noise policy. So in the meantime, if you or members of the public who are watching have any comments, especially thoughts on drones and things that are new to all of us, they raised a whole host of other issues like privacy that you don't deal with airplanes. So there's a whole new world of issues that could come up in that area. But if anyone has comments, they could email me or Chris Hart or another member of the committee or member of the board, and you could forward it along to us. We're happy to get any public input, and we'll be meeting July 31st and then probably again in August to continue working on these drafts. So those are the coming attractions of items that we'll be bringing to you for further action.
Any comments or questions at this stage from members of the board? Thank you, Ms. Conlon. Thank you to the committee for all the work you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your approval of those letters tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
We'll get those out
too.
probably tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Item 6 is discussion approval letter with respect to the Milton Rapid Transit designation. This resulted from the proposed meeting between the head of the planning board, Ms. Hall, and myself, which we had not had prior to putting this on the agenda in our last discussion. Two things have occurred since then. One is the planning director, Mr. Zawinski, reached out to the Department of Housing and Livable Communities, which used to be known as the Department of Housing and Community Development, and inquired about the basis for Milton's designation as a rapid transit community. And the Department of Housing and Livable Communities responded. And the response essentially was that they take the designation from the MBTA and the MBTA's designation. So when Ms. Hall and I met on Monday with Mr. Zawinski and Mr. Milano, we agreed that it made sense to initially have Mr. Milano and Mr. Zawinski reach out in the same fashion to the MBTA and about the MBTA's decision and the basis for and inquire about the MBTA's basis for that designation. And then if we receive a response to that, we may choose as a board to follow up and working with perhaps the planning board on that. And so that was what Ms. Hall and I agreed on Monday was the best course. Ms. Hall reiterated that the planning board is focused on compliance with the MBTA Communities Act, and that is their focus, and that the planning board seeks to work in consensus with this board and with the certainly the town administrator and the town planner. So we're hoping to speak with one voice on this, and that's what we agreed to do at this point. So questions or comments on that? Mr. Zoll.
So as I said at the last time we discussed this, I'm open to understanding the classifications. I think it's always good to understand why things are classified the way that they are. So I'm not opposed to that. I just, again, want to reiterate the importance of continuing to comply with state law to make sure that we don't drop the ball on the planning. I know Mr. Zawinski is working very hard on, on a plan with the planning board to adhere to the MBTA Communities Law as written. And so I just want to reiterate that we must be prepared to submit in December our plan as a MBTA community, our zoning plan. That's all I wanted to say
And
about
to
that.
that end, I will add that on July 17th, there is a Zoom forum. I'm not sure the time. I think it's in the evening, but we'll have to get that. But there is a Zoom forum that I think Mr. Zawinski is leading regarding the districts that have been mapped out by the MAPC and the Planning Board's consultant, and the districts and the density. So certainly something in a forum that will be useful for all of us to the extent we can participate, and certainly for anyone in the community who has an interest in this. But that forum should give the residents some substance to think about and talk about. So, other comments or questions, Ms. Musto?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and questions. The first question I have is, what is the timetable that you and Mr. Milano are talking with somebody from the T, and who are you talking with at the T?
So it's not me. It's
Okay.
what Ms. Hall and I agreed was that Mr. Zawinski and Mr.
Okay.
Milano would do the reach out. And in terms of timing, what we agreed was that we would want to get a response, if there was going to be a response, by the next meeting of this board, so this board could decide how to proceed if there was a response. So that was the idea that Ms. Hall and I had.
So that would be the July 25th. Just to,
Correct. Is that 2 weeks from today? Yes.
I just pulled up my calendar.
Yes. There you go. But perhaps Mr. Milano can talk about the touch points at the MBTA.
Sure. Part of it is figuring out the right folks to talk to. So we've already started reaching out. Tim reached out and has already gotten some information back. And I reached out to the contact that I typically start with at the T. So that is underway. Where it goes to be determined, but we're working on that now with that 25th timeline in mind.
Okay, and then the other thing I guess I would like to say is that I don't think there's ever been a feeling that we weren't going to comply. It's more to be treated equitably and fair based on classification. And so I don't think there's any harm in looking at the classifications and seeing if this can be looked at. As long as we have the opportunity to do that, we should.
I think we have consensus on that. I think there's a
Yeah.
consensus on the planning board, and I think there's a consensus on this board. And so I think we're speaking with one voice on that. We'll see what response we get. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Moore?
Just to kind of tie up the date. So the next community information session for MBTA communities is Monday, July 17th at 7 p.m. That will be held on Zoom. Tim and the planning department will also be at the farmers market this Thursday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And they have also posted an additional questions to the survey that they had administered earlier this year. So that survey is up, available through their website and through the town's Facebook page if you want to fill that out or speak to Tim and the team sometime this week, or join us next week for the informational session on Monday night.
Any other comments or questions on item 6?
Just a quick
Mr.
question for Nick. So the youth task force is going to be meeting at the same time. Is that session going to be recorded? Will we be able to watch it back?
Yes, they've been recording them and then been posting them over on the Milton TV page.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I like that timeline.
All right, that's item 6. Item 7 is a discussion update, letter to the Department of Transportation regarding the intersection improvement project at Randolph Ave and Chickatawbut Road. We discussed this at our last regular meeting, and in order to move it forward, we, Ms. Musto and Mr. Milano, worked on a letter, and then we met last Thursday, was it? Thursday, and discussed the letter, made a couple of changes, made a few changes, and then voted it and sent it on. And so the letter is, I don't know if the letter is up on the website or.
It's up on the site. We put it out through the email news announcement as well. And we did confirm receipt by the MBTA, or Mass DOT, that they've received it and would share it with all relevant parties.
Comments or questions on the letter? Ms. Musto.
I just wanted to thank everybody for meeting and getting that out in an expeditious manner. And the other thing I would say is we received, or I received a letter from a resident talking about some of the surrounding communities and would it be worthwhile sort of engaging them in that whole, letting them know what we did. For instance, Randolph, which is right down the street, letting them know what our position was and so forth. I don't know, Mr. Milano, if that's something we should be doing, or because that cuts through that town too. So
I have not spoken with folks in Randolph. I'm happy to just give them a heads up as to what this board has done and the actions that were taken on that. It certainly would have a knock-on effect, I think, in Randolph for sure.
Yeah, I think that's important just to let them know what we were proposing and everything and how the discussion went here. So maybe a copy of that letter for them to see would be a good thing. Thank you.
It's a good idea. Any other comments or questions?
I think that's a good idea.
All right. Item 8, discussion approval year-end transfers for fiscal 2023 and authorize the chair to approve appropriations transfers, which we may not need, but I think we have our town accountant, our not town accountant. What is your title, Amy? You are Director of Finance? Director, well, what is it?
Finance Director.
Finance Director. Finance Director and Mr. Milano. Ms. Dexter, do you want to come up and tell us what we need to do?
So this evening,
Mr. Milano, sorry.
I would ask for actually 2 votes. I think the board can approve the appropriations transfers we have prepared and presented this evening. And then secondly, also, authorize the chair to approve anything else that comes up that may before our deadline. So the fiscal year ends on June 30th. We have until July 15th to complete any transfers that are necessary to clean up our books at the end of the year. So there may be some that come up. What's in front of you, I'll run through them at a high level. If you have questions, Amy should be able to respond to those. The first page is reserve fund transfers. These do not need select board approval, but they do need approval from the warrant committee, and they've authorized Chair Dave Humphreys to review and approve them. We are meeting with Mr. Humphreys on Thursday afternoon. What you see in front of you is 4 reserve fund transfers. Some money for a vacation payout for the Consolidated Facilities Department that was not budgeted. A transfer out of the reserve fund into employee benefits for Medicare tax match. So we pay 1.42%, I believe, on every earnings of all employees. That exceeded what was budgeted this year. So we're seeking reserve fund transfer for that. Unemployment claims. So unlike businesses that play into the state's unemployment trust fund, we are self-insured essentially for unemployment. So if there's a claim, we pay that claim out. In some cases, those claims are fraudulent, or in other cases, we protest the claims, but often we will have to pay that money out first, and then it gets chased down and it gets credited back to our account. This year was a higher year than anticipated on unemployment, and a lot of it was down to fraudulent claims and to claims that we protested. So that money was paid out. We will get it back as a credit, but in the meantime, this account is in deficit, which is why we're seeking a reserve fund transfer for that. Lastly, Public Works with the snow and ice deficit. Winter is winter. Everything gets more expensive, and luckily it was a pretty light winter for storms, but we did mobilize a number of times and used a good amount of ice, rock salt, and everything else. So that's the transfer for the reserve fund. Flipping to the next pages, these are the appropriations fund transfers that are in front of you for approval. Generally, they are taking monies from salaries and wages and moving them down to a departmental expense. If there are places where employees were vacant or positions were vacant, and departments are sometimes taking advantage of that to do some work they might not have done otherwise. Police department, in the town meeting, the way that the police department budget is approved, that we approve a line item for salary and wages, and we approve a separate line item for overtime. So that money technically can't be spent without a transfer, taking one from salaries to overtime. So that's that change there. In addition to that, they move some money out of salary and wages into the general expenses to pay for an additional cruiser this year. They just are running more expensive, so they're buying the same number they always buy, but everything got more expensive. Small transfers otherwise, happy to answer specific questions. Health department, there are 2 vacant positions in that department. We have brought on some consultants to help us with inspections, camps, restaurants, food safety. So we're using the money we typically spend on staff to fund those services. We have hired an assistant health director, so one of those 2 positions is filled now, which is good and will help reduce that burden there. I think that's the gist. Lastly, Public Works, I just do want to bring your attention to on the last page. Our cost for servicing our vehicles, and DPW does service all the town's vehicles, is skyrocketing. That budget hadn't been adjusted in some number of years. For fiscal 24, we did increase it by $75,000, if you'll recall. But it is a place where costs went up during the pandemic and they haven't come down. So that's a place where we're just seeing increased expenses, and we've adjusted to that for fiscal 24, but hadn't done so in the past few years. So that's the rationale for that increase there. If you have any questions, happy to take them.
Questions or comments from the members? Mr. Zoll.
Just a quick question on the vehicle maintenance. Are the costs that are skyrocketing, are those parts costs or labor costs that are?
So we have staff on hand. That's our regular staff. So it's not staff costs. And this is on the expense side. So it's
all
parts.
Okay.
And if there's work that they can't do that goes outside, then that'll come there.
Okay. That's it. Just curious.
So the reserve fund is a fund that we set aside every year for unanticipated expenses, unanticipated, unforeseen expenses. And we appropriated in June of 2022 $200,000, and then we appropriated another $388,670 in December because we were concerned about, was it heating costs?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And have those come to have those hit as yet, Mr. Milano?
So in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. Our costs for natural gas were higher than they were last year. At the beginning of winter, we were looking at about a 50% increase in costs.
Right.
What happened over the course of the winter is that it was such a moderate winter that the prices for natural gas came down. And by the end of winter, we were paying what we were paying last year. So it was totally unexpected. For fiscal 24, we have executed we have found a new supplier. That's a price that we can rely on, but it's going to be at that $10 range where we were at the beginning of last winter. So that's the new normal going forward. Fiscal 23, what we were concerned about didn't come to fruition, so we were lucky. Otherwise, we would have needed to rely on that more heavily than we have.
So we had, because of that appropriation in December, we had $588,670 in the reserve fund. We're talking about now appropriating for these unanticipated expenses that you articulated. We're talking about appropriating $295,280 tonight from the reserve fund, which will leave $293,390 in the reserve fund. And if we don't have any other unanticipated costs before July 15th,
Correct.
and we're on the 10th today, right? No, the
11th.
11th. Then it's fair to say that $293,390 will fall to the free cash for next year.
Correct.
Okay. So we're looking for other comments or questions, Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I have a quick question for Amy. Just wondering if there are anything, I know there's only a few more days before it closes out, but are there anything that you can foresee on the horizon? Are you anticipating that there might be something out there, or it's sort of going to be something that just pops up? Like, do you have an idea that something may typically at this point?
Sometimes things pop up like invoices that people didn't realize were outstanding, things like that, but nothing significant, nothing major. There are a couple purchase orders that are encumbered in these figures that there is a likelihood that we might not need as much as we've encumbered, but until we get those invoices, we're not 100% sure. So definitely some things could shake out over the next few days, but I'm not at this point anticipating anything significant.
Okay. Thank you.
And I still have to look at the enterprise funds, and we would have to do possibly some similar year-end transfers, because however it's voted in the warrant, if you go over, you have to cover that. So something we may want to look at for next year is, do we want to keep that level of detail? Because at some point it's really just housekeeping at the end of the year. But yeah, so I don't anticipate anything significant.
Other comments or
thank you.
questions? So we're looking for two votes. One is to approve the year-end appropriation transfers for the departments pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 33B. And the second is to approve the reserve fund transfers that we discussed pursuant to General Law Chapter 40, Section 6. So those are the two votes. And then if we want to authorize the chair to approve any transfers that come up in the next 4 days, if necessary, we can do that as well. So I guess we're looking for possibly three, definitely
Just-
two. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead, Mr.
You just don't have, this board does not need to vote on the reserve fund transfers, so. that's
Oh,
one
so we
clear
don't
vote
need to
for
do
you.
that. Oh,
Just
okay.
the year-end transfers between the departments, the appropriations transfers between the departments.
Okay, so the authorization just needs to be on the, do we need an authorization for the year-end appropriation transfers?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, not the reserve fund transfer. All right. All right.
Just wanted
So,
to provide all the information.
yes,
but-
no, absolutely. So those are the three potential votes. So there you go. So what one is, all right, so I'll tee it up again. So sorry. Sorry. One is approving the FY23 year-end appropriation transfers. Those are the transfers within the departments that are listed in the 4 pages, I'm sorry, the 3 pages here, and 3 pages here, and summarized at the end. So that's the first one.
Correct. So I'll move that we approve the year-end transfers for fiscal year 2023.
The year-end appropriation transfers.
The year-end appropriation transfers for fiscal year 2023.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next one is to approve the FY23 reserve fund transfers. This is the $295,280 of unforeseen and unanticipated expenses. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have to do it.
Yeah.
There we
You
go.
may,
There we
but
go.
it doesn't
No, there we go. There we go. There we go. Sorry.
I'll move
Sorry, we
that
don't need
we
to do it.
authorize the chair to approve appropriations transfers for the close of fiscal year 2023.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. Now I've got
Can we
it.
do that?
Yes, appreciate it.
Amy, anything else?
Nothing at
All
this
right.
time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, discussion approval committee appointments and reappointments, the sign review committee.
I'll make a motion if we're ready for that.
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
I'll
ready.
move to reappoint the following individuals to the sign review committee for a 1-year term to expire on June 30th, 2024. John Zikowitz, Doug Schiebeck, Lawrence Johnson, and Tim Dwinsky.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 9B, Shade Tree Committee appointments.
I'll move to appoint the following individuals to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee for a 1-year term to expire on June 30th, 2024. William Madden and Marita Manning Cronin.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 9C, Local Historic District Study Committee.
I'll make a motion to reappoint the following individuals to the Local Historic District Study Committee for a 1-year term to expire on June 30th, 2024. Andrew Hoffman and Ryan McLean.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 10, discussion approval of the Town Administrator's Annual Performance Evaluation Summary.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Musto.
I have a question and or a comment I'd like to make about the committees. Should I make it at the very end? I'm happy to do it then at the end of our meeting. Like
So this is under committee appointments, and does it fall under the committee appointment and reappointments?
Yes.
Then please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So for people who don't know, we had a meeting on Thursday, and one of the things that we did is we did appoint somebody to the Youth Advisory Committee that was the choice of the coalition for their appointment. And I had brought it up to our board that these type of appointments, we're doing appointments for committee members, should be done at our regular meeting. The purpose of our last meeting on Thursday was to do the DOT letter. And we usually have these in between kind of meetings if there's an emergency issue. And we had said that we were going to meet for the DOT letter. And then there was brought up by Mr. Zoll that we should do this appointment. And my concern is on process, because I understand that there are a lot of things going on with the youth in town, and this was an important appointment. However, I had brought up the fact that the meeting could have been scheduled already, and we could do the appointment in a regular meeting where the public knows that we typically do these appointments at our regular scheduled meetings. So it wouldn't have impacted anything that we couldn't have done it then. And I'm concerned that we're sort of making changes here and there when it wouldn't have affected anything. And I'm a little bit upset to find out that we did appoint somebody at that meeting when we should have done it, I feel, today because of process. And I understand they're not meeting till Monday. So clearly we could have done that appointment today, which would have been fine, allowed the person enough time to go and get sworn in and attend the meeting. So I just want to bring that up, that I don't feel that that's the proper process. I feel that, these committee appointments should be all done at an open meeting that people expect at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, we have our meeting. And so that was my concern. So I did want to just voice that.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Zoll.
I just want to respond briefly, because I think Ms. Musto and I disagree on this point. What we heard about from the chief of police, in the Cunningham Park and the Milton Coalition on June 27th was a call for action on the ongoing crisis that is these parties in the woods that continue to spiral, where knives are being shown, where sexual assaults are happening. When we posted that we were going to be having a meeting, which was publicly posted, so it wasn't a surprise to the town, Ms. Musto agreed, in fact, that it was a quick up and down vote. For the sake of scheduling, as I think everyone knows, it's the more advance notice you can give to folks, the better. So it seemed to me to be a not controversial and in fact responsive to the needs of the town move to approve a coalition appointment to the Youth Task Force at that meeting. I work in a way that is transparent, that is open, and that is responsive to the town and its needs. I think calling into question whether or not we are doing things above board. Ms. Musto stated at that meeting that this was a slippery slope, and if we start doing things in this manner, it will set a precedent for other instances that we'll do it. And then I'm directly quoting here, we're setting ourselves up in a not good light. I take strong exception to those words. I think that there are plenty of precedents in the past where the select board has appointed people to committees. I've been led to understand that from multiple individuals. And I think that it's not helpful to this board to continue to suggest that we're operating in a way that is somehow not following precedent and that is somehow concealing things from the town, where we provided this as an agenda item in a publicly posted forum. We had the meeting on Zoom. I think that bringing it up again only seeks to undermine the credibility of this board. And we have seen with horrendous results nationally what happens when members of publicly elected bodies raise unfounded questions about the legitimacy of their work. I take very seriously the position to which I'm elected and the work of the select board. And I think that constantly calling it into question or questioning the motives or the methodologies only undermines that work. When we have real things that we want to accomplish here, when we have real problems like what's happening in the woods, the residents want us to be responsive. They want us to take action. They do not want us to argue about process and procedure. So this is the only statement that I'm going to make about this. But in the future, if there are opportunities that we have in following open meeting laws to respond to the needs of the community, I will respond to the needs of the community.
Okay. Oh, Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I do feel that I need to respond to a few things that were said. As I said before, I also take it seriously what's going on in the woods. Okay, so I don't appreciate any kind of innuendo that I don't. However, that being said, an appointment done that day or done today would have had the same result. And at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, I think a lot of people are probably at work. Most people expect most of our business to be done at our meeting set time. There's, I do want to, you did bring up something about, that was said about sexual assault. So I do want to follow up on that. Do we have any information from the police chief on that in terms of numbers or anything like that? Nick, do you know if we have anything?
Ms. Musto, I think we're getting a little bit of feel
Okay.
from the
Okay, but
agenda item.
all right,
And
but
we
I
can
do
put it
wanna go
on
back-
for another discussion.
Okay,
for that, but
I just wanted
don't want
to
to go too far afield from the agenda item.
Okay,
that's all.
I do have to respond though.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think that innuendo that there's anything more than talking about doing a proper process, that there's some kind of another agenda from me. I do resent somebody saying that because that is not true. Anybody who knows the way I work knows that I am above board, and I try to bring up things so that they're done in a proper manner. And although we might disagree on that, I think that's okay if we disagree on it, but to question that, I find offensive. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Certainly not unprecedented for the board to take actions like this in meetings between meetings. So item 10, discussion approval town administrator's annual performance evaluation summary.
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Ms. Bradley.
Thanks so much. Sorry, my voice is a little, I'm fighting something. I waited per our last meeting to receive any additional evaluations. I have not received any. The summary, therefore, is exactly the same as it was that I reported on 2 weeks ago. You will receive it after this meeting because I didn't receive any additional ones. And at this point, I'm getting ready to go on vacation next week. So I feel like that's 2 weeks was enough time, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, to wait for additional ones.
Well, it's up to the board. So let's see, comments or questions from the members?
I think it's plenty of time, and congratulations on going on vacation.
Okay, so I'll send that either later tonight or tomorrow by the end of the day. I have a couple things to do tomorrow.
So it's the same summary that
100% the
we
same.
have reviewed before.
Yes.
So do we want to take action on that, or do we want to?
Can we move to approve the town administrator's annual performance evaluation summary if it's the same as we've already seen?
Did we have it in our packet?
Not for
Would
this
have
one. We
been
had it at our
last.
prior board.
So it hasn't changed since that?
Hasn't
No.
changed.
Okay.
Hasn't changed.
Nothing's changed.
So is that a motion?
I guess it was a question, but sure, I'll make it a motion.
Go ahead,
I'll
Mike.
move to approve the town administrator's annual performance evaluation summary.
I'll second
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
that.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Item 11 is discussion approval of one-day liquor licenses. And the first is item A, the Eustis Estate Historic New England. And we have some information on this. Perhaps Mr. Milano would like to tee this up for us.
Sure. So we have a one-day liquor license from the Eustis Estates, Historic New England, for an event on August 19th from 11:30 to 6 p.m. for the David Chestnut Jazz Festival. For the board members, we did receive a question from a resident regarding that special permit and whether the event is allowed under the special permit. I did ask that the building commissioner take a look at the at the special permit, as well as details about the event. He reported back to me. I did share with the board that after reviewing the special permit, looking at the event link, I don't see anything that would prevent the event from happening. The event is within the special permit based on the board's decision. And so I'll turn to the board at that time.
And just to, sorry,
Zoll.
did you have your hand up?
No.
Just to clarify, so this is a wine and beer or wine and malt beverages permit only, so it's not all alcohol.
Correct.
And so I will add, we were referred to the special permit, and the special permit lays out, this is from the a special permit from the Board of Appeals from 2015, and it lays out the conditions for use of the property. And there are 4 conditions for use of the property under the board's decision. One of them is that the non-museum related use of the premises for activities such as social events and non-applicant related meetings at which sound is amplified, which is presumably the case because this is a jazz festival, shall be limited to not more than 12 per year, not more than 2 per month, and no event shall noise emanating from any special event, this is the definition, be unreasonable. The next one, this is 1F, non-museum related use of the premises for activities such as social events and non-applicant related meetings shall be limited to members of the applicant who enjoy access to such events through a particular form of membership sponsored by the applicant. And then the next item 1G is on the condition the applicant is provided with contact person. The applicant should provide not less than 14 days written notice of all special events to that person who shall serve as a representative of the neighbors if someone has been appointed as a representative to neighbors. So the reason I read those is that I do see where the building commissioner today did say that he finds that it is within the special permit. It's not up to us to enforce the special permit, but certainly if we think it's in violation of the special permit, we can deny an alcohol license. I do have one question about section 1F because it shows that there are going to be 300 participants, and item 1F is that non-museum related use of the premises for activities such as social events and non-applicant related meetings shall be limited to members of the applicant who enjoy access to such events through a particular form of membership sponsored by the applicant. Not sure exactly what that means. It seems to suggest that it should be limited to the membership, and I'm not sure if 300 people is the membership. So I have a question. So given that I have a question, I'm wondering if it would compromise this event that is not scheduled until August 19th, if we were to reschedule this for the 25th, is it? 25th, our next meeting? And maybe ask the building commissioner about that, because I do have a question about that. So, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that same lines, I would wonder then, they have weddings up there. And I know that, I don't know how many people come to some of these weddings, but I would assume at least more than 100. And I don't know that all of those are members of this as well. So I wonder if that's just, if maybe we're interpreting this in a way that.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay.
And again, we don't have enforcement. It's not our enforcement
Right.
of it. We only have the liquor license application. But I do have that question, and if it wouldn't compromise the event at all, I'm just wondering if we could get some follow up. And I appreciate the building commissioner jumped right on it today and reviewed it. But I just wonder if we could get that follow up. That would make me a little more comfortable if the members, Ms. Musto.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do recall when this went in, part of it, I believe they had said they might have like up to 8 events that people could have weddings and things like that, something like that. I remember some talk about that at one point. But I think, could we also find out with the 300 people, is that open to people that are just members or other members on that? I mean, maybe we need to ask Historic New England on that event.
On the event link, non-members had a higher ticket price, but you could purchase as a non-member.
Okay, so we really should look at that then for the next meeting.
So it doesn't compromise the event, because it may be fine. But if we could put it on for the 25th and either get Mr. Etchu, the building commissioner, to respond, or if he can be available, because there may be questions that the members have.
Certainly.
Perhaps we could do that. Is that all right? All right. So we will defer that one. And then the next one is the Forbes House Museum, which is item 11B.
I'll make a motion on that one if we're ready.
I think we're ready.
All right, I'll move to approve the one-day liquor license for the Forbes House Museum on August 20th, 2023 for a one-act play, Lady Windermere's Fan.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 12, discussion approval meeting minutes, June 23, 2023.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes dated June 23, 2023.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 13 is the town administrator's report. Mr. Milano.
Sure, thanks. We talked about the MBTA communities events that are upcoming, so just repeat it again. Monday, July 17th on Zoom at 7 p.m. for an info session. Thursday, July 13th at 1 to 6, they'll be at the farmers market with a table to answer questions, provide information, and we do have a survey out with additional questions from the prior survey earlier this year. In keeping with the survey trend, we have 2 more to announce. The Open Space and Rec Plan survey is out. You can access that from their website, miltonosrp.com, Milton OSRP for the Open Space and Recreation Plan. This is about understanding the needs of recreational facilities in town, what's used, what's not used, and what folks are looking for. So please take a few minutes to fill that out. And the community health survey is also active from the health department. So this is a brief 5-minute survey about Milton residents' health and well-being. Also available on our website to take some time to fill that out. It'll be very helpful for us moving forward. One other announcement that 2 officers graduated from the academy on Friday in Plymouth, Molly Dillon and Aiden Johnson, who both were previously cadets, completed the academy on Friday. They started this week in field training. That'll run 5 or 6 weeks, and then they'll be working full-time as regular officers. So we welcome them to the police department and wish them best of luck. And hopefully we'll keep filling in some of those vacancies as that department is low on staffing. So those 2 are much needed and much appreciated.
That's great.
Ms. Musto.
Hi, I have a quick question for Mr.
Sure.
Milano. I was looking for that other link on the website for the noise, the train stuff with Reedville. I did not see that on there for complaints.
Okay, let me.
I
take a
didn't
look
see
at
it on
that
our
and
website.
Put that up.
I just want to make sure that that's out there with some explanation of what it is and why people should fill it out.
Okay, no, I apologize for that. We will get that out there if it's not up there in the right spot.
Thank you.
All right. Item 14 is the chair's report, which we already did. Item 15 is public comment response. Any public comment response? None seen. Future meeting dates, Tuesday, July 25th, Tuesday, August 8th, and Tuesday, August 22nd. Any issues, comments, questions about those dates? Seeing none. Mr. Milano, we have executive sessions for items 17, 18, and 19. Are those all ripe, or could they be deferred, or are they all?
No, we have something on each.
Okay. And items 20 and 21 and 20 and 21 would be back in public session. Are those similarly ripe, or may they be ripe?
Maybe 21, likely not, but potential.
Potentially. All right. So we will come back into public session then for those items. Just didn't want to come back, make people come. I didn't want to make people come back if we didn't have to. So I will move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with A, the Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employee Association, B, Milton Professional Management Association, C, Milton Firefighters Local 1116. Based on my belief that a discussion of these matters in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board, the Select Board will return to open session. That's a motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Zoll.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Ms. Musto.
Yes.
Item 18, I move to enter into executive session to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Blue Hill Ave, B75, and 676 Brush Hill Ave, B74, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will return to open session.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Musto.
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Item 19, I move to enter into executive session to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, Town Landing, Wharf Street, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, it's a roll call vote. Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
So we will go to executive session. We will discuss these three matters, and we will return to public session for items 20 and 21. So, thank you. Welcome back to the Select Board meeting of July 11, 2023, returning from executive session. Item 20 is discussion approval of the memorandum of agreement with the Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association for July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025. And Mr. Milano, do you want to just tee this up for the board?
Sure. This is an MOA renewing a collective bargaining agreement between the town and the clerical union, who represents most of the administrative staff in town departments. It is a 3-year deal, retroactive back to July 1 of 2022. Broadly at cost of living adjustments of 2% a year, with some adjustments on additional steps throughout that contract of 2 other years. We did make some changes to the step structure of the employees in this unit. In addition to that, the town received some concessions related to drug and alcohol testing, and we have made an adjustment to how these employees accrue vacation time.
Questions, comments from the members, or motions?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we move to approve the memorandum of agreement with the Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association for July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Without objection, we'll defer on item 21, which is the lease agreement for the Town Landing Wharf Street. And item 22 is...
I will move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. We will return on Tuesday, July 25th at 7 p.m. and enjoy your summer until then. We'll see you then. Thank you. Bye-bye.